that brings a sort of power and determinism to the community and the monetary policy. All of a sudden, without having to guess, how much your currency will be worth relative to, let's say, the other currency, Intercoin.
Right.
By just controlling either the numerator, which is what we are we have our stablecoin solutions, which I'll talk about, and you can also implement your own policy, like, manipulating the denominator. So say you want to, for example, issue more local currency and airdrop it to people with a universal basic income, which Jason could talk about. So you could do that. You could continuously dilute your currency by 1%, let's say, a month,
sure,
or 1% a year, and that would be a way to solve hunger or food insecurity. And then I could get into why stablecoins, sort of many stablecoin solutions are possible on top of this. But I do want to note about stablecoins one thing: no stablecoin can be 100% guaranteed. Because obviously, if you make a guarantee, like the Bank of England made a guarantee about a peg, and then George Soros and other currency speculators were taking advantage of that guarantee, essentially by cornering, forcing them to take losses all the time. So although, you can't really have 100% stablecoin unless you're backing it with 100% reserves.
Right.
I'm just going to say that by capping the upside, you can, however, take money off the table, right? And cap the upside. When Intercoin goes up and the community is pegged to it, well, then community currency will go up. But that would attract speculators, right? If you want to keep speculators out, you want to have true utility tokens. Why would you want to have that? Well, maybe because you don't want to be governed by security token laws,
Right. Yeah. I was going to get to that too. So
yeah.
I get it. So basically, I get it for the most part. So basically, this model is to protect, correct me if I'm wrong, to absolve any potential legal risks with SEC or securities laws. Is that correct for these ICOs if they were to launch on Intercoin's platform, as opposed to going on their own and trying to build on top of Ethereum or some of these other smart contract platforms? Can you elaborate more on that, or did I kind of hit it on the money?
Yeah, you basically got it. I mean, I'm going to say sort of a larger picture is that, the interesting thing for guys like us, right, building something that will change the world, something to improve the world, which in my opinion, the people who really change the world for the better are mostly not American presidents or anything.
For sure.
Which is funny because they have all this power, but really who changes the world is like guys like Steve Jobs. Everyone used an iPhone. The guys that invented, the internet, the guys that invented and ladies that invented, the web, email.
Exactly.
So everyone's using these things for their own purposes, and that's what improves the world, right?
Yep.
So sort of the idea was like, hey, these open source projects like Wikipedia, projects like the web, you can view source anytime, right? You could do this. And so you could basically, any of these projects have sort of been a net gain for humanity, right?
Yep.
And people were like, well, the problem was they're underfunded a lot of the time. Whereas there's sort of this, I would say, collaborative model versus competitive model, right? In competition, you take all the risk, you fund something big, like a drug research, right?
Yeah.
A collaborative model, you don't take that much risk. You just kind of don't have any patents or anything. It's like Einstein building on top of Newton's laws.
Sure.
Newton building said, I stood on the shoulders of giants. So collaboration needs to have maybe a payment system, nevertheless,
right,
for people to sort of be paid out. And it's an interesting question: how much would they get paid? There's now Patreon. There's a Brave browser with the basic attention token.
Yep.
There's Netflix for But the thing is, these are all centralized solutions,
right?
And so the promise was, what if instead of, let's go to my example of Cubics, Facebook, right? Facebook got a ton of VC money. They got all these users, but now guess what? They control all the interactions, right? They control all the data unencrypted. They store that data, like they can get to it.
Right.
So there's all this stuff that comes with that, right? And now we're talking on the level of like affecting a democratic election, maybe, or I don't know. I think honestly that it's not even, the problem is what if everyone's data is leaked or hacked or whatever. So the idea was, hey, why don't we have a network that's owned by the participants, right? So that people kind of build it, like right here, the founders, they build it and then they get out. And then this yellow box goes away and you're back to just having this.
Right.
That was the promise of
true utility. Right.
Exactly. That's collaboration. Instead, sort of with regulators, well, they said, they had a point. They said, listen, among these consumers are tons of speculators, right?
Right.
And they're not buying Netflix token to watch movies. They're buying it to essentially speculate. Yeah. And I would argue that the non-scalability of Ethereum is to blame for that a lot of the time also. Right. It's a big part of that. Because if you can't really make 100 transactions, right? This is what, you will need a scalable platform. That's like the first thing I say is like, if you don't have that, then you're essentially relegated to speculating.
Right.
Have any Ethereum tokens sort of graduated by now to being used for payment?
None. As far as I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't heard of any like CryptoKitties. Like they almost crashed the network.
Yeah. No one's using this stuff right now from what I see. Yeah.
So my point is, it can't be used for that. So what is it going to be used for? It's going to be used for speculation.
Right.
And it's going to essentially give utility tokens a bad name, which is what happened.
Yep.
So we're trying to both solve the scalability problem, allowing payments to work, but also take a look at what the alternative is. The alternative is security tokens, right?
Right.
And security tokens is what we'd had to go through because, by the Howey test, a lot of these things could potentially bring a profit. Right. But what if you were able to take all that profit off the table and guarantee there's no upside, right? To, let's say, a utility token. And we can get into why people would pre-buy a token in that case, right?
Yeah.
But they would certainly not buy it expecting the token to go up in price. They would buy it to actually use it, right?
Right.
So one of the things the goals of INTERCOIN is to bring back the market for utility tokens and for the regulators to actually be happy about it and be like, yeah, these are actually useful, things that are used. So essentially that's why I say it's like Ethereum 2.0 because it's going to be something that's actually used for payment and for, as opposed to speculation, it's going to be actually used in the real world, hopefully, with a bunch of pay buttons.
Got it.
So that's what INTERCOIN is doing.
Interesting. How does can you go and elaborate a little bit more on the universal basic income feature to INTERCOIN? So let me ask you this. So let's just say a year or two down the line, or even a couple months down the line, INTERCOIN's launched. We can go buy the coin on exchanges or through Cubics. How does this work? Do I stake the coins in a wallet, kind of similar to proof of stake in a sense, and I just receive a dividend? How does this UBI or basic universal income feature work with INTERCOIN?
Jason, you want to take that one?
Well, Jason, we need you to unmute.
Oh.
There.
Okay.
There you
go. Hear me now?
Yep. We can hear you.
So, so universal basic income, each community can govern their own basic income. I call it community-based income, so I like to call it a CBI.
Okay.
But I don't want to reinvent universal basic income. Just each community on their own could decide how much basic income to give out. And with all this data they can get for their own blockchain or for their own non-blockchain DLT, they can get from their local fintech how much is needed or the data in real time of what's being affected in the community. And they could let the community have their own governance to choose. Should go up 1%, down 1% basic income. So it'll be up to each community to adopt basic income if they like, and govern their own basic income.
And that income comes from where? From the reserves, or how does this? That's what I'm
That,
trying to wrap my mind around. How does that work exactly? Because it's got to come from somewhere. So
that can come from many different sources. Another thing is I've been talking to Greg about is, communities can tokenize different assets the community owns, because I've had people ask, why would a community want to put all their assets into Intercoin and then issue their own local currency? They don't have to put all their assets, but they back their own local currency, how much they want their currency to be worth or how much liquidity they want to have for it. And then other assets they can tokenize. And all these different assets can back the community, which would give out the basic income. So it can be from top down or bottom up, how the basic income is given out.
So essentially, you can think of the basic income as, like I said over here, your community is sort of backed by Intercoin, right? What you could do is you could inflate the denominator, the amount of money that you issue, and you give it to everybody. And again, this is sound money in the sense that when you're coming in, you know the deal. You know exactly what the rules of the community are, and you choose whether to enter the community or not. If, for example, I go into a city, Toronto dollars, they had this, for example. That particular project eventually fizzled out. But again, this was with paper money a lot of the time. And Berkshires have it now, which is that you essentially get 10% of your money was going to go to the homeless or, to social programs.
Yeah.
As you buy into the Toronto economy and then you get out, they, either on the way in or on the way out, they will have a tariff or, conversion rate.
Sure.
And so, I speak to a lot of libertarians and I speak to a lot of people of different political leanings. And, you want this to essentially appeal to as many people as it can, because, there's many ideas about what money is or should be, what monetary policy should be, what taxation should do. And when I talk to anarcho-capitalists, often, the harshest critics of taxation, they look at this and they say, yeah, this is actually just like a voluntary tax. Yeah, we could totally get behind this. You had sort of the more practical-minded, like outcome-based libertarians like Milton Friedman, which are called consequentialists, or utilitarians. They say universal basic income would be better than a welfare check, because you don't lose benefits when you get a job, right?
Right.
And, people watching this, some of them heard a lot about universal basic income. They have this thing in Alaska where everybody gets a dividend from the oil proceeds of the state. And they get about $2,000 a year only. But Alaska has the least inequality of all U.S. states. And I think that started when they started the program. So just that $2,000 a year, sort of a floor for everybody, allows people to say, okay, well, I can pay for my food, or I can pay for this or that.
Right.
They supposedly have 0% of people living on $5 a day. I live here in San Francisco, and Greg lives in New York, and there's a few thousand people, at least in both those cities, that live on $5 a day.
Yeah.
And, some attributed to the permanent fund, the oil permanent fund.
Interesting.
And that's the thing is, like, you can do things like, hey, do you want to end food insecurity in your community?
Right.
Well, give everybody a cell phone, right? And they'll get this money supply, that city money, like right there on their phone. You can't do anything like that right now.
Right.
Well, maybe I guess you can do that. I guess you can give people like snap cards, these things where they use them. But the idea is programmable money allows so much more than just, loading up a card or something like that. These are all kind of possible applications of what we call community fintech applications, which are different than dApps.
Right.
They're more robust in that they are designed to run within a community, right? Within a community currency. And again, each community is in charge of its own currency, its own policies, so they don't have to necessarily affect the rest of the network. And that's the other thing, is the network is secure. These are, experiments. Just like they say states are laboratories of democracy, right? These are laboratories of financial technology and innovation on local level. So essentially, UBI is either financed by existing circulating revenues, and it looks exactly like a flat tax on everybody that essentially is used to pay for either public works like parks or roads, but actually a UBI is not top down. It's not the elites deciding what to spend money on. It's the individuals, right, deciding what to spend money on. And the other way it's funded is by donors to a community. Like, let's say Haiti, I want to airdrop a bunch of money to Haiti right now, use it right now. People can use it right now on the ground, as opposed to waiting for FEMA or IMF or someone to come in and top down sort of try to build stuff for them, right? Somebody has to fix their chimney. Somebody has to restore electricity, right? Somebody has to get their kids to the hospital. These are very different things. There's not necessarily needs to be one size fits all solutions to that. And of course, besides donation, there's also tourism. There's also people visiting, going to Berkshires, right? Getting those Berkshires,
right?
Getting those Bristol pounds and spending them in the city. And what happens there is that the merchants are okay with losing 2 or 3% on transactions. They're okay with those kinds of things because that's what Visa does.
Right.
That's what PayPal does, right?
Right.
And so, basically, it's that money could be used in a voluntary way to help the community. So that's the UBI.
Interesting.
Aspect.
Basically, building
a lot of these communities could use having this local fintech built for them and to be interconnected with other communities. So that's a big problem right now of different local currencies. They don't have liquidity and interaction with other communities' local currencies. So Intercoin could be the bridge between these communities. So like Calgary now announced they're going to have their own local currency. There's another city that Greg and I need to go contact. There's been several cities that we've contacted about Intercoin.
Yeah.
And we'd like to see integration between these local currencies.
Interesting. So essentially, you guys are building a truly democratic cryptocurrency and blockchain ecosystem for communities to just basically connect with each other through this blockchain. And yeah, man, a pretty interesting project. Very cool. Where are you guys right now in your roadmap? Do you guys have the coin ready to go? Like what's can you give us an update on your roadmap right now?
Absolutely. Basically, we spent the better part of this year, finalizing the architecture for all this, talking to other projects, figuring out, who our advisors are. Some of them are, by the way, for example, Warren Mosler, who, has advised even countries sometimes, if you read his book, basically on how to issue their own currency. Okay. And, we're trying to do this on the city level. So we have people, Ryan Fugger early on advised us basically on sort of this thing. Again, this is the guy that started the original Ripple before they were out.
Yep.
And then, so basically, and then this guy invented Kademlia. So we spent the better part of last year figuring out exactly what we're going to do and starting to build the payment network on top of the social network. Where we're at is we have spent already around $700,000 on building the Cubix platform for social networks. We already have 6 million users around the world.
Right.
We already have 53,000 communities as of now, using sort of community leaders, I should say.
Sure.
Using our apps. So these are people that have not such huge communities, not like a city or a university, but they might be a soccer coach. They might have 50 people. They might be a church pastor with like 500 people, parishioners. They might be a police captain, right? So we have already 53,000 community leaders. So the first thing that we would do is iterate with those people.
Right.
Meaning we'd roll out, to 100 people, community leaders, see how well we can get through onboarding everyone, introducing, a currency and making sure that it's secure. Once that works, we roll it out to everybody. Where we are now, while we're doing that, is we're pre-selling the tokens, right?
Got it.
And those tokens, I should mention, are securities in the view of, I think, some regulators. So we're taking the position that, well, if they are going to be considered securities, we have a private placement memorandum right here on the site, and disclaimers, and essentially saying, please go read the PPM, which, you should go read. If you're an accredited investor, you should go read it. And basically we have anybody around the world can go buy Intercoin if it's legal according to securities laws.
Got it. So you guys are not a security token, just to clarify, or are you?
We are, in some sense, a security token. This is what's weird, is that there's only a dichotomy, right, between security token and utility token.
Sure. Yeah.
And people say, rightfully so, that the utility token is dead. I'd say mostly killed by the regulators.
Right.
And also by the fact that Ethereum doesn't scale.
Yeah.
We're trying to change that. We're trying to bring, if you want, like if you're watching this, you want to go back to investing in utility tokens and like building out these actually useful networks, then Intercoin is a vehicle to make that happen, hopefully. But what we're doing is we're selling a security. Again, I don't know if we personally think it is a security. I think it's very useful. Once it's launched, I don't think it will be considered a security even by US regulators. But again, I can't guess what they're going to say.
Okay, so gotcha. So basically, you're not registered with the SEC as of right now as a security token.
Well, no one has registered any token, as far as I know, right, Jason? With the SEC, it's all exemptions from registration.
Exemption. We've filed exemptions, which
Got
is
it.
considered a form of registration.
Got it.
We're not fully registered. A public offering, that's what an S1 would be. Nobody has done that.
Got it. Okay, gotcha.
And we met with the regulators. We shouldn't say the name of who we met, but we met with regulators at the SEC headquarters on February 27th this year. And at that time, they gave us a whole different view that they said Ethereum, Bitcoin, they're all securities.
Yeah.
They came out later.
Well, they didn't say they're all securities. They say they may be securities at that time.
They said maybe securities. And then a couple months later, they said Ethereum's not a security.
Right.
So I think that gives a lot of hope in the space that many projects that are open source and truly decentralized, unlike Ethereum, I have a lot of thoughts that it's not decentralized as they make it out.
Sure.
It's one monolithic blockchain that
they've rolled back transactions before, from what I understand.
That too.
With the whole DAO situation. So.
And that's something we wouldn't be able to do with any community. They have control of their own community currency.
Got it.
Well, yeah, as far as I know, I just want to say this, is that it's an interesting world, because our current financial system is seller beware. It's not buyer beware.
Right.
There's chargebacks, right?
Yeah.
And buyers feel very secure, buying stuff, and maybe they can get it returned.
Right.
With the crypto ecosystem, you may have that with escrow, multi-sig and stuff like that. But for the most part, you have non-reversible transactions at the base layer, right?
Right.
If I send you the money, the only way you're going to send me the goods is if you know that money is irreversibly in your account. So there's that fundamental sort of impedance mismatch, getting money into the system, which, by the way, I would argue a lot of the reason that the crypto market caps also grew is because as much, you had to get the money into the system, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to just get it out right away.
It's clunky.
People don't want to just give you that money back.
Yeah. Get it.
And multiply that across, the whole world, but for a few years. But but there's really legitimate, I think, there's legitimate value to Bitcoin, legitimate value to Ethereum. I just feel that newer technologies, it's like the cassette player versus like the iPod, right? There's legitimate value to playing music,
right,
repeatedly, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But Steve Jobs saw everyone's using their Walkman. He's like, I can do better than this, right?
Yeah.
And and that opened a whole new world. Now we're all using iPhones. So, but to get back to like, what is to the brass tacks? What are we doing? Where are we at? We're pre-selling these tokens.
Got it.
There is definitely a possibility of making profits, on this.
Sure.
Similarly to how if you bought Bitcoin initially at like 2 cents, right?
Yeah.
You had a good chance. So we're currently selling this at 7 cents.
And you definitely couldn't say that if you're a utility token. So what Greg just said right there is definitely makes us a security by making that statement.
Well, that's what I mean. It would seem to be, in my opinion, there's a possibility of making money, right?
Yeah.
If there was no possibility, like with these pegged currencies, it would be a utility, in my opinion, and opinion of many lawyers. But what we're selling is something that can make you money. It also might not, right, if we fail.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
and that's why you got to read all these disclosures. But
Absolutely.
the point is that people pre-buy this, and then we are issuing an intermediate token next to go on exchanges in 2019. So what that means, okay, is that people who buy the INTERCOIN intermediate token will be able to trade it before the network is launched, the actual INTERCOIN network is launched, which is what every Ethereum token is doing now, you know.
Right.
So we're actually issuing this probably on Ethereum, it looks like, you know, with Securitize or Quark Connects or one of the companies that specializes in this. And then there are now these ATSs that are coming out, like Open Finance, T0, that are listing security tokens. So when people ask, are you a security token? We say, yes, we're a security token, which we are, a security, and we're a token. But, you know, at the same time, we're also thinking about tokenizing our cash flows and giving them to people who have this intermediate INTERCOIN token. Cash flows like the validators that I spoke about.
Sure.
Taking a % of the transaction. So, you know, you might get a cash flow as well. It's kind of nice. But you're helping to fund an ecosystem that will bring utility tokens that actually work to the world.
And I like to see us become a security coin and then not a security coin at all and be utility tokens. So we're a security token if we're going to have an intermediate token on Ethereum. And the people don't realize the difference between a token and a coin is a token would be run like on Ethereum. A coin, you have your own base layer protocol. So we're building our own non-blockchain distributed ledger technology of our own that we'll have everybody else build on top of.
Got it. Okay. So the network is not live yet, the mainnet or the protocol that is, but that's going live sometime in 2019. Which quarter exactly should we expect to see INTERCOIN out on the market in terms of being able to actually use the actual coin?
So for all that information, first of all, you could go to the white paper.
Okay.
You could look at the roadmap. There's tons of information in the white paper on sort of anything that you might want to know. Let's say the roadmap. As you go to the roadmap, you see, you know, we want to have our sort of token issuance by this time. We want to get on exchanges by this time, hopefully. Again, all these are subject to the vagaries of life, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the private alpha, which is essentially us testing with community leaders we have now. Hopefully that works. You get the public beta, which you actually start to work with cities, okay? And community pilot projects. I mean, cities have actually allocated tens of millions of dollars just for UBI, okay? Just for UBI. So we're talking about cities like Berkeley, not Berkeley, Stockton, California. Michael
they
Tufts.
made it. Yeah. They're like the first.
Now even Chicago. What's that, Jason?
They allocated $40 million for Stockton, California.
That's just Stockton, California. I mean, there's about 30 cities, 36 cities. So we know a guy who's running for president in 2020, or at least, you know, he has a campaign to do it.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang. And Jason, can you briefly just mention?
Officially announced. Yeah, Andrew Yang announced on CNN, MSNBC, and CNBC.
Yeah.
And he's running on universal basic income.
I know him. I don't know him personally, but I've seen an advertisement or something along the lines of him. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go for it.
So, yeah, we talk to him from time to time. His campaign said that they make introductions to us to different cities.
Got it.
And yeah, we're working with anything he needs from us. We like to help him with because we're like in the same, you know, we have the same beliefs.
Got it.
So like, for example, here, Andrew Yang, this is the guy. And the thing is with, he knows the mayors of many cities, a growing number of cities that want to do UBI, right?
Right.
So think about it. We've
You
got
have a pilot program or want to have a program.
exactly. So what happens is you've got here a UBI that you might want to do, and of course, if it's backed by INTERCOIN, then these cities would buy a certain amount of INTERCOIN, maybe tens of millions of dollars each.
Sure.
Right? So that's what you get as an investor, like in INTERCOIN. One of the things that who's going to ultimately buy this other than other investors, right? Because if there's no use for it, then it's just people, selling it to the bigger fool in the end, right?
Right.
It's not what this is about. This is about actual use cases within cities, within communities. So we're doing these community pilot projects.